Welcome to Right for Joy. My name's Allie Cross. I'm a USA Today best-selling author and certified life coach. I have chased joy my whole life until one day I realized I already had it. I found my joy, and now my goal is to help you find yours. Joy is all around us, so let's see if we can grab some of it for ourselves today. I'm Allie Cross, and this is Right for Joy. Hi, everybody. I am back with a wonderful guest. This is Tamara Grantham.
Hello.
Tamara is the author of more than a dozen books. So Tamara writes fantasy for middle grade through adult readers. I did quotation marks on the middle grade, just because I know personally as a reader of fantasy, we read middle grade through adult,
Yes.
read them all because
Right. Yeah.
I just enjoy clean fantasy and
Mhm.
a lot of amazing stories are happening in middle grades. And Tara is no slouch. She's launched to #1 Amazon and Barnes and Noble. It's one thing to become a bestseller in your niche, but to launch as a bestseller in Barnes and Noble is an art form. So congratulations on that,
Thank
Tara.
you. Thank
And
you.
also, wow, I've seen that you had won one Roan Award, but you have actually won two,
Too. Yeah.
which is amazing.
Mhm.
Congratulations.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
kind of a recent win, so I haven't updated
oh,
the bio everywhere yet.
yeah. Oh, that's
Mhm.
super cool. And she's won Indie Fab's Book of the Year award. Like I
Mhm.
said, this lady's hot stuff. So let's all run and buy her books. She's a
Oh,
native
thanks.
Texan who now lives in Kansas with her hubby and 5
Mhm.
kids. And 6 pets. Hey, what do you have? What kind of, well, I guess I should
We,
also ask about the kids if I'm going to ask about the pets. You've got 4 boys and 1 girl. I know of the children.
yes.
What pets
hmm
do you have?
We've got 3 cats and 3 dogs.
Okay.
Um, 2 of our dogs are brother and sister, and they're husky. They're a husky Pyrenees mix. So they are
Yeah.
very,
Talkative.
yeah,
They're
high
probably like
energy.
having 2 additional children.
Yeah, actually, one of them's scratching at the door right now. So,
I, I thought when I read 6 pets that, like maybe there would be a cat and a dog, and then there would be turtles and lizards and stuff. But 3 cats and 3
no,
dogs. That's I
yeah,
hope you have a big house.
yeah.
'Cause
Well, it doesn't feel big enough.
right. I remember when my boys became teenagers and suddenly my house felt so small because
Yes,
all of a sudden they were
mhm,
men sized. And of
right.
course, at that age, they still are kind of lanky and don't even really know their own size. It
I
just felt
know.
like they took up a lot of space.
So my daughter's the second oldest, and she was the tallest. She was taller than all her brothers because she hit her growth spurt when she was like in 4th grade.
Girls
She was
do.
so proud of that fact that she was taller than her brothers, and now, and now 2 of her brothers are like a head taller than she is, and
Uh-huh.
it's
That's
just
great.
something,
Are they all at home? They're all living at home still, right?
Yes, they are. Except my senior is getting ready to leave for Guatemala on his
Oh,
mission. So
wow,
that'll
that's
happen in
amazing.
August.
Oh, that's awesome. Good for
Yeah.
him. And thank you to
hmm
him for going out and doing that.
Yes,
He'll do a lot of good there. Like that's more than just knocking on doors. That's
that's
hard
true.
work he'll be
It
doing
is.
there.
hmm
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Let's see what else can I tell our listeners about this. So she doesn't have many of them, but when she does have free time, she loves nature walks. And of course, she's a Star Wars and Star Trek fan. I got to ask though, Star Trek or Star Wars? If you had to
That's
choose.
it's an impossible question. It really
It's so true.
I
I think
can't.
I tend to lean on the Trekkie side, but it could just be because I've had way more Star Trek than Star Wars. There's just
hmm Yeah.
so many more hours
When
of
when I'm watching Star Trek, I'm the big Star Trek fan, and when I'm watching Star Wars, I switch, and then I'm suddenly a Star Wars fan. So
sounds about right.
yeah, it's
That's
just a
fun.
hard, yeah.
Yeah. So is there anything you'd like to say about you or your books before we jump into the interview?
This isn't exactly about me, but it's kind of more about you because I
Yeah.
took a class from you from Storymakers 2014-ish, I guess. I hadn't published anything yet, and I wanted to know more about indie publishing. And this was kind of like one of those life-changing moments when I
Was
went to
that
that
class
class.
I did with Rochelle Workman?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, because until then, I didn't really have a very positive view of self-publishing. My sister had self-published a book and she didn't do very well. And it just kind of jaded me towards it to think that I'm just going to get an agent and I'm going to only publish with the big
Yeah.
publishers. And when I took your class, it really opened my eyes. And I was kind of like, you know what? There are other paths out there. And I don't think I would have pursued publishing with, well, I published with like smaller publishers first, and now I'm trying to jump into self-publishing. So I'm going to have a lot of questions for you at some point.
Well, I have a lot to say on the subject. I could talk a whole long time about indie publishing. And I'm so happy to hear that because you know how it is when you do a thing, when we write a book, when we put stuff out onto the interwebs or anywhere where it leaves us,
Hmm.
and then we may never talk to another person who ever saw that class or
Right.
who ever read that
Mhm.
book or whatever. And you
Yes,
don't know.
you don't.
And
The internet is
we
great,
do
and it's
those
great that we
things.
can put our books out there, but you're right. We kind of lose that face-to-face interaction. We don't know who's read our books, and we don't know what
Yeah.
kind of impact we've made unless they've come and told us, which is pretty
Or they've
rare,
left a review.
or
I
left a
think
review.
whatever kind of author you are nowadays, authors we're always having to harp on the please leave a review, and I feel a lot of
Hmm.
times like we're that, trained puppy dog at the corners, like begging for reviews. And it does start to feel, I feel maybe a little disingenuous or something,
Yeah.
because maybe readers think that we are begging for reviews because that's how we sell books. And it is true. That is, the more reviews we have, the better
Hmm.
informed another reader can be. And honestly, whether it's a negative or positive review, it still equals the more likely a person is to pick up your book. It's a
Right.
weird dichotomy, but it's a truth
Hmm.
of our industry.
Hmm.
But it's also the way that we as authors can communicate, albeit one way, because Amazon, for instance, does not allow us to respond to comments. I think some authors were naughty with it in the early days because we used to be able to respond.
Hmm.
I know when I first released my first vampire book, I got a most excellent review that was like sort of negative, but it was because I mishandled the blood. And I hadn't even thought of it. I just had them popping blood into the microwave, right? And
Uh-huh.
and this person told me, and I wanted to respond, like to ask for more information, like because they seemed so knowledgeable and
Right.
helpful. And
Uh-huh.
I couldn't respond. So it was so frustrating. But if that person ever listens to any of my stuff going forward, I totally went and researched it. And because
Hmm.
I'm an indie, I was able to go back and fix how they handled blood in that novel. And now they
Oh,
handle it
nice.
properly. But
But
it is a way,
it's a
it
one-way
gets,
conversation. Like you
it
wish you could go
is.
back and say, look, I was able to fix this because of your comment, because of your
Exactly.
review.
Like, because that's big to me. Because I'm
Hmm.
sure if that person took the time to comment on that, many other people would have felt the same way and thought
Hmm.
less,
Hmm.
because of that thing. And it was a good lesson for me all around because now I know not to take anything for granted, even if
Yes.
it's how people warm up blood. But
Hmm.
um, but I do love reviews. Like I know you hear a lot of times people say, don't read your reviews, like just stay out of them because the negative ones can hurt our hearts sometimes.
Right.
But I actually read them because it helps me know um like what I'm doing well and
Yes.
where I can
Hmm.
improve. Do you read your reviews?
I haven't recently. I've kind of the last time I read my reviews, I actually made my husband read them.
Uh-huh.
And so he was like editing as he went, and
Right.
saying, "Oh, this is a good one. Let me read this one." And he wasn't just reading only the good ones. We found
Oh,
some pretty we found some um pretty valuable feedback also. And we
yeah.
also found some hilarious ones.
Yeah.
Like I got a 1-star review because their Kindle had updated and they didn't like the new format. So they
Oh,
gave my book a 1-star review,
I've had a
which
few
was
of those
interesting.
as well. A few
Yeah.
that this is on my Kindle and I don't know how it got there.
So and
And
you
I'm
get
like,
a 1 star for that. Okay. So
yeah,
anyway, um, yeah. So that was the last time I read my reviews, and I think it was a good way to do it, to have somebody else
yeah,
read them and just kind of filter, because you're right, it hurts your heart. Some of
it
those,
really can. I think maybe I've been in it long enough that I'm jaded. I can read the
right?
one
I mean,
stars,
you've got a thick
whatever.
skin, but there are sometimes those negative reviews that just kind of stick out, and you're like, oh, ouch.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. But
Hmm.
I've had some fun with my negative reviews.
Hmm.
So but that's a whole other story. And honestly, I'm not like normally a sarcastic person, but I have had some fun making memes like
Yeah.
things to post or whatever out of negative
Yes.
reviews because I
Hmm.
know that the things that were negative are actually going to be selling points for
Hmm.
someone
Because
else.
people want to be like, oh, let me go check that book out and see the other
Right.
reviews.
Like
Hmm.
I got a review one time about this is just another Twilight, whatever. And I'm like, really? You thought it was like Twilight? I couldn't put Twilight down. So I'm gonna use
Right.
that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of fun. But I do think that we often as writers just never know.
Mhm.
So thank you. This is all back to the thing, a 10-minute conversation that started from one comment. This is fairly
Right.
par for the course for me. So, um, and really
No, I
anybody who
like
knows
how,
me probably laughed their
yeah.
heads off when they found out I was going to do a 10-minute podcast. I'm sorry, I talked over you. Sorry, what were you going to say?
No, I was just agreeing with you. And I was saying,
Oh,
I like the organic, like, let's take the conversation wherever it goes.
all right. Let's do that.
Hmm. Yeah.
We don't need to be
Mhm.
constrained by any rules, man.
Yes.
Down with rules. So back to the rules. Um, I did want to talk about joy because
Hmm.
as we talked a little bit before we got started, our world is so full of all of the things that are hard, and
Hmm.
know that life is hard. And being a writer, especially where it can be such a solitary thing, and we very rarely know if it matters at
Yeah.
all. Um,
Yes. Hmm.
I wanted to focus for just a couple minutes on what has us coming back to it day after day. And
Hmm.
I hope that for most of us, it's not because we're masochists. It's because we find joy in this venture.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
first off, I want to know then how would you define joy?
Well, I think joy, as opposed to something like a temporary happiness, joy for me is something that lasts. And it's something deeper than just temporary happiness or temporary pleasure. Joy is something that you find it deep within. So even if you're having a bad day, or something doesn't go right, you can still feel joy from certain places. So your family, your hobbies like writing, And so for me, I think that would be,
Got me excited for a minute as we were talking before because you
I
said or
mentioned
crochet, and
crochet.
I'm like, oh, let's talk about crochet. But she doesn't crochet. Not yet, anyways.
No, I
Sorry.
don't.
Go on.
My mom does, and she tried to teach me when I was a teenager, and I'm still determined to go back and figure it out. But I like writing too much, so I spend my time
Yeah.
writing.
But can
Or
you write in front
playing.
of the television?
I
Can
don't
you
write
write
in
in
front of
front
the
of the
television.
television? See,
Mm-mm.
crochet, it's a wonderful thing to do when you're watching
Yeah,
Star Wars or Star Trek. I mean, on repeat, not the first time, obviously.
yeah.
But
No, that's a really good point, and that's kind of why I wanted to learn to do it, because I think it would really be helpful to just keep my hands busy while I'm watching
yeah,
TV.
I crochet, and like you, my mom was this like brilliant crocheter when I was a girl. She passed away when I was 19, so I
Mm.
missed my chance, because I was
Mhm.
not. Who cares about when you're a
Yeah.
teenager? But as an adult, it's given me a lot of pleasure and a
Mhm.
little bit
Yeah.
feeling like when I crochet, I feel a little closer to my mom.
Right.
It's
That's so
because I know
nice.
that she would be pleased that I'm making baby blankets for all
Mhm.
the babies,
Oh,
So,
that's really nice.
so I bet your
Yeah.
mom would just feel like, oh, she does
Yeah,
love me. Kind
that's
of like
true.
when we try to get our children to pursue any of the things that we enjoy. Um, I don't know
That's
about
so
you, but I
true.
had zero luck getting my kids to do what I enjoy. But I always felt like that would make me feel so loved.
I tried one summer. My kids, they were younger. My oldest was probably like 10 or
Yeah.
so. And I tried to sit down and I'm like, let's just write a one-page short
Yeah.
story. It can be whatever you want it to be. That's the great thing about writing, is you can just come up with your own rules. I mean, they weren't super into it. But I think maybe it sparked something. I think the actual writing it down part was harder than they thought it would be,
Yeah.
because they could come up with these ideas, but when they had to translate that onto the paper, it was harder than they thought, and they just kind of lost interest.
And isn't that just the truth of writing? I
Yeah,
mean, we
it's
all
just
suffer that.
uh-huh,
Even
uh-huh.
after all of the number of books that we've written, I would bet that both of us could agree that still starting a news story or
Yes.
trying to get a certain plot twist or something that we've
Mhm.
imagined to get
Right.
it to actually behave on paper is, I don't know why,
Yep.
it's like wrangling some weird otherworldly
It's
beast.
true.
It's so
It is.
strange.
It is.
But maybe one
It
of your
doesn't.
children will grow up to be this like, internationally best-selling, like a Brandon
Maybe.
Sanderson, and you
Maybe we'll see. We'll see.
so I want to know, I think I already have such a wonderful idea or view of where you find joy in your writing, but
Mhm.
I will let's talk about that. So where do you, Tamara, find joy in your writing?
So I think I'll go back in history and talk about why I started writing,
Yeah, please.
because when I started writing, I was at home with three little kids, ages 1, 3, and 5. And my husband was doing his residency training in Tulsa, Oklahoma. We had just moved there. I didn't know a lot of people. Um, the people I did know were really nice, I just want to say. But it was just hard. It was really hard because I was basically alone all day with three little kids. And I felt like I was losing my mind. I was just changing diapers and doing dishes and all these repetitive things that never ended. And I was just depressed and not happy. And I read Jessica Day George's Princess at the Midnight Ball. My friend loaned it to me. So I had really good friends. And I read it and I thought, I have had stories running around in my head for so long. Why don't I just write them down? Um, and my husband was on board too, because he's always wanted to be a writer, but he didn't have time for it at all. He was working 80-hour weeks.
Yeah.
But he challenged me and he's like, okay, this is your word count,
Oh,
like
wow. He
he
got
researched all the
that
things.
specific.
Yes. And so I sat down and I wrote that book in a month. And I mean, it was It was my first book, and I was not filtering anything. It was just this free flowing, but I wrote it,
Is that
and
the
it
book
was,
Forgiven that you ended up writing a trilogy and it was Forgiven?
yeah,
So
yeah,
Tamara talks a little bit about this in her about section on her webpage. And it's an
uh-huh.
interesting read for those of you who'd be interested. You should read what she says about it.
Yeah, um, it was the first time since my husband had started his residency that I felt that real sense of joy and pride in something that I was doing. Not that raising kids didn't give me joy, but at that point in your life when you've got little, young children like that, it is really hard to see
Yeah,
the big picture, and it is really hard to think, why am I doing this? What's the purpose? Now I do. Now that my
sure.
18-year-old is about to go on his mission to Guatemala, and he's, graduated high school, and he's going to be going to college and stuff. Now I can see, okay, I'm really glad that I was there for my kids.
Yeah.
Um, but at that point in my life, it was just really hard, and
Well,
I
that
needed that.
that thing that we experience, and I think it's fairly universal, of setting our own ego and self aside for pure service, like the raising of our children when they're that little and we're not getting a lot of
Hmm.
feedback in the sort of way that humans crave
Right.
feedback, like, hey, you're doing a great job, keep going,
Exactly. Uh-huh.
it's service. And we do set ourselves aside for that, which is not a bad thing. But for some of us, and I was definitely one, I started writing when my boys were 2, but for some women we need just a little more, a little something that we can, like
Mhm.
a rope dangling in the well
Yes.
that we can just hold on to, that this is me, and to
And that
maintain that
it's
hold on
okay.
our own
Yeah.
personal identity.
It's okay to take that time for yourself, because in turn it makes you a better mother.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
it made me happier. And I know I was a better mother because of it. And now I have 5 kids. At the time I had 3, now I have 5. So my younger 2, they've never known a mom who didn't write. Like, that's
Yeah.
just always been who their mom is. And I feel like I'm setting a good example for them by doing that. Like, they can see mom has goals, mom is accomplishing her goals, and mom, and it just gives me a little more to my identity. Not that being a mom isn't, that's like the best identity I could have, but
Yeah,
it
and I did want to talk about that for just a quick second, because
Mhm.
I am a mom who wanted to be a whole lot more of a mom and only managed to have, I had twins. One pregnancy
Mhm.
managed to make it, and it was that one. I would have had a house full if I could have. My next
Yeah.
door neighbor is one of those amazing moms who was all in all the
Mhm.
time. And if you are that kind of woman, then I think that that is your special gift. Like, that is a
Yes.
gift, like a spiritual gift that you have.
Mhm.
I didn't have that. As much as I wished I could have had more kids, um, I was
Yeah.
definitely a person who needed to know who Allie was,
Mhm.
apart from Allie the mom, even though I
Yes.
was 1,000% all in on being
Right.
a mom. I
Right.
just also needed, and I didn't feel, and I'm sure you would feel the same. It wasn't about taking time away from our kids, because I wrote when they napped, like,
Yeah.
or during quiet time, and
Mhm.
I
Early in the
wrote,
morning before they're up, or late at night
yeah,
after they're in bed. Yep.
in the
Mhm.
carpool line, at
Yes.
karate or whatever sport.
Mhm.
So there's ways that you can still, if you need that outlet, like Tamara and I did, apparently,
Mhm.
there's nothing wrong with grabbing it. If you don't, and you don't feel that need to, like, oh, there must be something wrong with me because I am just happy being a mom, then don't worry about, like, that is
Right.
amazing that
Mhm.
you can just love what you're doing. But some of us need to look a little harder to find that extra
Mhm.
to really round out our experience as young moms.
Yes.
That's me on
Mhm.
on my pedestal there.
No,
So okay.
no, and I totally agree with you. And that's why I did bring up the crochet thing because, even if it's not writing, it can be crocheting, it can be playing the piano. There's all
Yeah.
these things that you can really enrich. And I feel like they do enrich the motherhood experience and they enrich your children in the process.
Yeah. I agree
Mhm.
also with the um what I feel I taught my sons because I was pursuing my own dreams. I
Mhm.
feel like they grew up with a respect, like with greater respect of me and and they
And they
learned that if they wanted something, all
yeah.
then don't just sit around and go, I wish I was. You go try
Mhm.
it. And
Right.
and maybe you discover you love it and you work at it, that a thing
Mhm.
takes a lot of work but has a lot of value. So I
Yes.
think it's been a
Mhm.
great like you
Yeah.
said, I'm not sorry for the things that my working
Mhm.
taught my kids. And again, I
Right.
did it again, Tamara. I did the quotes. And I don't want anybody to think like working is also bad. Because we're all just
It's
trying to
you
be the
know,
best moms we
it's a
can, darn it.
very it's such a tricky balance. I think it's tricky for everybody. Every mother out there has to, find this balance between
Yeah.
the how much am I giving to my kids, which is in the beginning I was thinking I'm just going to give everything to my kids, but you can't do that. That doesn't last. You
Well, and they don't
you
even want everything.
yeah, no. And that can lead to, being like a helicopter parent. I don't want to do that. I want to let them have their own experiences and make their own, you know, they can fall down and get hurt and figure out, okay, next time I've got to walk a little more carefully this time without me being there, hovering over them. So, um I I think now looking back, I have this perspective of how grateful I am for the balance that I found.
Mhm.
But at the time, that was something I really struggled with.
Yeah. Well, and you were really blessed. I want to like applaud your husband for being
Mhm.
as supportive and
Oh,
encouraging as he
yeah.
was.
Yes.
He-
I had this passion for English literature, for reading, and I really wanted to continue learning more about that topic, about literature, about reading, and then about writing also. And so writing was it was natural for me to want to just gravitate to writing novels, which is what
Yeah.
I did. So,
So
um,
now that you've laid the groundwork, that's how you came into it. So where do you find your
mhm.
joy now in your writing?
Yeah. Things have changed and shifted. Um, I really sometimes I have to take a step back because I will get so obsessed about marketing. Are my books doing well enough? What if nobody's reading my book? Just all these thoughts that get in my head that really start to wear down that joy that I get from just writing. And
Yeah.
so I really do. Sometimes I have to just take a step back and be like, look, I'm not doing this for the accolades. I'm not doing this for the money. I'm not doing it for anybody else but me. I'm happy when other people read my books. But the truth is, I started doing this because I found joy in writing and telling those stories and using my creativity. And so sometimes I just have to take a step away from all the others, all the other noise, and just come back to writing. And I write because I love the creativity. I write fantasy because I love that I can create these worlds and make up my own um, rules. And it's just, for me, that is like one of the best ways for me to just use my creativity. And then when other people read it and enjoy it too, that's just like the cherry on top. But
Yeah.
I'm not, like if an artist paints a picture, you can immediately see it. Anybody else coming in can immediately see it and appreciate it. All they have to do is look at it that once. But when a author writes a book, it takes time to go through for a reader to go through and read the whole book and enjoy it. And so I don't think artists paint to never show anybody. And I don't think writers write. I mean, there probably are some writers out there who just write for themselves and, as a therapeutic thing to get things off their chest. But most writers, I think, probably write because they want people to read their stuff.
Yeah.
And so, for me, I do. I want people to read my stuff and I want them to enjoy it. And, but I have to be careful because I don't want to get into that cycle of, if nobody's reading my books, then what's the point? I can't get in it. It kills my creativity and it kills my joy. So I just have to take a step back sometimes and be like, okay, I'm writing because I love this and because it gives me joy and because I love creating characters and I love creating these worlds they're in. And people will read it when they read it, but I'm not going to, get so obsessed about it that I just forget the reason why I write.
Yeah. I had so many thoughts while you were talking, how our joy can be sort of grow exponentially as people read it and love it. It adds to our joy, but it isn't the source of our joy in what we do.
Yeah.
I think every writer, especially when faced with the big old question about social media, which
Mhm.
is a reality regardless of your path to publication. And I think we all have to ask, like, why are we writing? And I think, like you said, we all are in this because we want people to read. But if our audience never grew from what it is right now, would we still write? And if the answer is yes, I would show up to write stories for the readers I have right now. Then
Mhm.
it kind of eases the stress of you must social media, you must
Right.
market.
Mhm.
And then it makes marketing it changes your perspective about marketing just a little bit,
Yes.
because
Mhm.
then you're just wanting to find more people who would love your story, like you and your readers love your story, and less about the you know it's like being a fisherman versus being a whaler or something,
Yeah.
like where you're
Mhm.
just having those big nuts. I in my head, like all these things telling me, oh, you don't want to say that because you're going to offend all the people who do like net fishing, you know? Sorry, I don't mean that, but hopefully the analogy sort of works. I don't
Yeah, and
know.
I think it's got to do with your perspective. Like, you want people to find your books because you feel like they would enjoy it and that it would enrich their lives. Um, but then again, when you go out and do the social media thing, sometimes you really do feel like you're just like, oh, buy my books, and it's hard to find. But I feel like sometimes we don't have to do it alone, especially if we find a group of people who love our books already, you
Right,
know?
which is something Tamara does. That's how we met, is
Uh-huh.
co-oping, like working together. And
Mhm.
I think that it's important for, like, I like that we touched on this because the business of what we do as authors is complicated, and like any job, there's parts of it that we like less than other
Mhm.
parts. But it's important when we are in that sort of phase where we're spending a lot, like I try to do my marketing and stuff on a specific day, for instance, because
Mhm.
it's not my favorite, so I don't want to have to do it every day. But I can get through that day or a couple days or whatever it is, doing the thing I don't like so much, because the rest of my time can be spent doing the thing that it's
Mhm.
all about, the thing that
Correct.
actually brings
Mhm.
joy. And like Tamara said with her definition of joy, which was that it was a more lasting feeling, with where happiness and unhappiness happens, because life is
Mhm.
happening. If you're generally moving and forward and doing the things that make you happy, the overall outcome is a life
Mhm.
of joy.
Right.
Yeah. Did I
Mhm.
did I sum that up right for you,
Tamara, is
I
that
think
about
that's
right?
perfect.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely
Uh,
perfect. That was
that
really
is
good.
what you said. So
Yes.
thank you so much for this was a fun conversation. And I just love how every single one of these is different and I love it.
hmm
Thank you for talking with me about being a mom and finding your
Yeah.
own joy within that very important calling of being a mom. And because
hmm
I think that a lot of people will relate to that and be grateful for what you said. So do you have
You're
anything?
welcome. And I just wanted to say thank you to you because I really appreciate this opportunity to be able to just talk about these things that are like really important to me. And like motherhood and writing or and being a wife
Yeah.
are like really not not to push my husband aside. Actually, I don't think I would be where I am if it weren't for him. So but I just really appreciate this opportunity to be able to talk about these things that are like so important to me.
You're welcome. Thank you for saying yes. I don't know when this particular episode will air, and I also hope that I'll I'm sure as any good marketer does, I shall recycle this particular episode down the line. But I you said yes at a time when I'm just starting out. And
hmm
it your time is precious. You've got a lot going on to take the time to do this with me. And we ended up talking for a lot longer than I told Tamara we would be talking for. So I'm very grateful to you. And do you have any last things that you would like to say to the audience?
Um, the only thing I can think of, and I think we've already said this, is to find your own joy wherever that is. Crochet.
That's a good parting. That's good.
Mhm.
Let's leave it at that. That's
All right.
it's our own little mission that we have to do. So
Yes.
go forth and
Yes.
find it.
Go
So
forth and
thanks.
find joy.
Yep. Thanks for joining us,
Okay.
Tamara. And thank you to everyone who's listening. We really appreciate you being here and sharing this conversation with us. Bye,
All
everyone.
right. Bye.